Today's daily reading brings us to Ruth chapter 3 and 4, and that's going to close out the book of Ruth for us after today. It's only 4 chapters, but man, what a wonderful 4 chapters it is. And so, just like yesterday, time would not allow us to dive into all the depths found in this book, but I do encourage you, take some time. I'm going to give you, something to look at here in a minute and examine it, and I believe it'll be a help and blessing to you. So as far as the way of overview goes, the first 6 verses of chapter 3, Naomi begins instructing Ruth concerning Boaz on how to present herself unto him. And there was nothing untoward that she was doing to Boaz that day. It wasn't, kind of lewd or anything like that. She uncovered his feet and laid down at his feet. And that is, she was illustrating putting herself at his feet and at the mercy of him and his decisions. That's what was doing it. And then you see what she asked. She essentially asked him to redeem them there in verse number 9 of chapter 3. But Naomi instructs Ruth concerning Boaz and how to present herself so that he might redeem them. Verses 7 through 13, Ruth presents herself unto Boaz. And in verses 14 through 18, Ruth then returns unto Naomi, and she returns unto her full, because Boaz blessed her once again with, I think it was 6 measures of barley, if I'm not mistaken. Chapter 4 begins Boaz going about redeeming Ruth, and the verses 1 through 8, Boaz confronts the nearer kinsman, because though Boaz was kin unto Naomi, and so that qualified him to redeem, there was one that was closer relation that had, dibs, if you will. And so he confronts that person to see if he was going to be willing to redeem not only the property, but Ruth as well. And we see that he was not willing. He was willing to buy it. He wanted the property, but he did not want Ruth. And so he wasn't willing. He was qualified, but he wasn't willing. And then verses 9 through 12, Boaz announces that he's redeeming Naomi's inheritance. He's marrying Ruth. In verses 13 through 22, we see the birth of Obed, which will become David's grandfather. Now, as far as takeaways, verse number 18 of chapter 3, Naomi speaks unto Ruth. After Ruth has done all she can, Naomi speaks unto Ruth, and she says these words, "Sit still, my daughter, until thou know how the manner will fall." And that's good advice for us Christians. When we do what we can in any matter, we should prepare the horse for battle, but safety is of the Lord, just as Proverbs tells us. But when we do what we can, there's times we just then at that point need to sit still and let God move. And just as the song says. So we see that in verse number 18 of chapter 3. And then you can't go through the book of Ruth without talking about the near kinsman or the kinsman redeemer. And there were 3 qualifications for the kinsman redeemer. They had to be qualified, they had to be willing, and they had to be able. So in order to qualify, you had to be kin unto the person you were redeeming. And of course, you had to be willing to do it. We saw that one man, the nearest kinsman, was not willing to redeem. And then, of course, had the ability to do so, have the financial means in order to redeem. Now, all of this is pointing to Jesus Christ. It's just like anything in the Old Testament, it's all pointing to Christ in some form or fashion. Well, Boaz is a type of Christ in this illustration in many aspects of it, in that Jesus is our kinsman redeemer. See, he became qualified when he was born of the Virgin some 2,000 years ago, and he became flesh, just as we are flesh. And so he became qualified. He became our kinsman. And, of course, he was willing to go to the cross to pay for our sins. We see that. He was willing to do it all. He wasn't willing just to do part, as that one man was. He was willing to do it all, as Boaz was. And then, of course, he was able There's only one person in the history of mankind that was able to wash us and redeem us from the slave market of sin, and that is Jesus Christ, because Jesus is the only one that knew no sin. He knew no sin. He made him to be sin that knew no sin, so that we might be made the righteousness of God in him. When he was crucified, he paid for our sin debt. When we put our trust in him, our sinfulness is imparted upon him. His righteousness is imparted upon us. And so he is certainly able to save us. I want you to know this and know it well. Jesus alone is able to save to the uttermost to them that call upon his name. And so that's our study for today. Like I said, we could spend hours in this book. I encourage you to do so, but that's all that we have time for today, and I hope to see you tomorrow.